This is the first day of this April 2025 two-day sesshin. And for this first day, we're going to start off by reading from a book titled Throw Yourself into the House of Buddha, The Life and Zen Teachings of Tangen Harada Roshi. Tangen Roshi, of course, is, for many of you know, is one of the main protagonists, if you will, in the Three Pillars of Zen, other than Roshi Kapleau. For those who are new and haven't read that book, Philip Kapleau trained in Japan in the, I'd say, mid-50s to early 60s. He was there basically for 13 years. And his first 3 years were at this monastery called Hoshinji, which is in the town of Obama. Yeah, that's right. And there he met Tangen, who's, I think, about 10 years younger than Philip Kapleau, who was like in his 40s back then. Anyways, they became Dharma brothers, and I know Roshi Kapleau visited him several times. Once he returned back to the U.S., he did several visits in Japan. But anyway, so there's these two books that came out just recently, finally, and this was the first one, Throw Yourself into the House of Buddha, and they're basically collected teishos, encouragement talks from Tangen Roshi. So I'm going to read a chapter 10 called Zazen. I thought it'd be good to start off by talking about posture and the breath practice, or the different practices that we have, and working with pain. And a good way to talk about this, it would be through this chapter that he writes about Zazen. So we begin. How should we practice? This is, of course, Tangen Roshi speaking. How should we practice? What is the path? Zazen is the foundation of our practice. We start out by learning to do Zazen correctly, following the guidance of a teacher. To settle the body, settle the breath, settle the mind. And in fact, he'll be talking about those three different so-called topics: the body, the breath, the mind. Essentially, the body, breath, and mind are not separate, just one. But provisionally, we can divide this into three parts in order to explain it. Body. Check your posture, making sure that you are properly positioned on your cushion. Your bottom is a little farther than halfway forward on the zafu. So yeah, I often tell people, zafu, by the way, is a Japanese word for cushion. We just, as much as possible, we've kind of translated all Japanese words into English. Some are not possible, but for zafu, we now use the word cushion. So I always tell people to sit no more than halfway, ideally a third on the front of your cushion. That way you're not going to cut any circulation, cut the sciatic nerve, for instance. So sit in the front third of the cushion. After arranging yourself properly on the cushion, cross your legs and lean your whole body forward towards the ground. You can do this at the start of a round, say when the bells are being struck. Then bring your body slowly back up, taking care to leave the lower back straight. This might be a little misleading, though, keeping the lower back straight. We do want to maintain the curvature of the spine. So, as I often say, you can, of course, raise your chest to straighten out your back, but make sure you have the curvature in your spine. Don't try and be like a Marine and get everything straight. That's not ideal. Basically, and he'll talk about this a little later on, once you're in your posture for the round in sesshin, or outside as well, you just basically, the whole body is relaxed. An upright back and spine with the curvature in the lower back, but the shoulders, the upper body, it's just the whole body is relaxed once you get into your posture. Okay, I'm going to repeat this. After arranging yourself properly on the cushion, cross your legs and lean your whole body forward toward the ground. Then bring your body slowly back up, taking care to leave the lower back straight. Now you will be centered in your tanden, with the spine straight, the hips back, and the belly forward. So yeah, there's kind of like a tilting of the pelvis here so that your belly is kind of like sticking out. And of course, then you'll have the natural curvature in the lower back. Tanden. So the tanden is in the lower belly area. Japanese have a tendency to really talk a lot about the tanden. We don't do that so much. As I'll talk a little later on, we're really not into technique. We don't want to make a technique out of getting into this posture. So we don't talk a lot about the hara or tanden, if ever, really. Now, having said that, as you progress and your practice matures inside and outside of sesshin, what you will find naturally, and it's not always the case, but just as a general guideline, you will find yourself having more of your attention down in the lower belly area. It's not a science, but that is the tendency, because that's where all the action is. That's our center, vertically and horizontally, is in the belly. You can leave that there. And why is that? Because as you focus more on, as you pay more attention, as you focus more on, say, the counting of the breath, you get less caught up in this bifurcating mind of ours, this thinking, thoughting mind. It doesn't become such a huge burden, and we just find ourselves naturally, as we follow the breath, find our attention gets more and more down here in the belly. Your ears should be on the same plane as your shoulders and your nose aligned with your navel. The back of your neck is straight so that your head is suspended as if a string from the heavens were pulling up the top of your head. All right, so a little piece of advice about that. I often do this, even to this day, which is grab your robe. You want that chin tucked in. So your chin is like a drawer, and you push. It's as if you're pushing a drawer, so your head gets straight. And the other trick that I do sometimes is, tug at my robe to make sure the back of my robe is up against the neck. That can be really helpful. This way the chin will be aligned in the correct place. I always like to talk about this, about keeping the head adjusted, just because it was just so beneficial for me in my early years, where my head was always jutting out. I was just so stuck in my head, so wrapped up in my thoughts, trying to figure things out. And so the monitors in Roshi really got on my case about that and kept adjusting my head. And you know what? After like months and months of frustration and wanting to, I was just feeling so frustrated that my head was always jutting out, and I was feeling frustrated that the monitors were always adjusting it. But, once it was there, once it was in place, I did notice a difference. It did help my practice. This is not to say that your posture is forced. It is very natural. You don't need to put any tension anywhere. Shape it with your mind, not your muscles. Just do your best to work towards a good posture. I think most of us, when we come to this, we have all kinds of tensions in the body. Tight muscles behind just a lot of strain in the neck, or a lot of strain or tight contractions behind the shoulder blades, that will all naturally kind of dissipate over time. Is once your body, your mind becomes more relaxed, once you get into the practice and you're doing it every day, as time goes on, then that kind of tension will release itself. It's just a question with sticking with it and not giving up. Even if your body resists, keep your mind open. Remember that it is all right. Remember that it is all right. Simply work with what you've got. Simply work where you are. Keep your eyes half open, naturally gazing softly at the floor in front of you. Place your left hand on top of your right hand and join the thumbs together, resting them on your feet if you are sitting in a lotus posture, right in front of your tandem. There's that word again. If you do this with attention, you will be able to sit well. Discriminating thought is abandoned. True nature is one with itself, most naturally in this posture. True dignity is true mind. Sit in the form of true mind. Now the breath. The breath flows in and out from the bottom of your belly. You are breathing from your tanden. You can become settled in this way. Patiently breathe this one breath deeply from your lower belly. So about the breath, you're not trying to control it. You're not trying to manipulate it. If you're breathing shallow, you're breathing shallow. Breathing deeper, then you're breathing deeper. But the key here is not to try and control anything, not to try and manipulate the breath. Just let the breathing breathe. When you're asleep, do you control the breath? No, you just breathe naturally. That's part of our nature. There's no controlling there. There's no manipulating, contriving. So it's the same thing when we're doing Zazen. Just breathe naturally. Don't make a technique out of it. Your tanden becomes your center naturally. The bottom of your belly is where you are the stablest. The breath goes in, the breath goes out. Pour all your body, all your spirit into this one breath. There is nothing outside of it. Just breathe this one breath. This is all there is. Give it your all. You are one with the breath. The way is one. Even if you are not thinking about taking this breath, the breath is breathed for you. You are perfectly nurtured like the baby is nurtured by its mother. There is nothing to figure out. You are naturally cared for. When you go to sleep at night, are you directing your breath? Since you were born 20, 40, 70 years ago, 365 days a year, how many times in one night alone has this breath been breathed? Always it has been natural. You have never had to will it to be. Last section, mind. Various ways of practice are given to us. There is a practice just right for you, the practice that will reveal to you this one-way path. There is no question of comparing and saying, this is a good practice, but that one is not so good. It is just like the Olympics. You have the 100-meter race, the 1,000-meter race, and the marathon. Depending on the way you are able to practice, one practice will be better for you than another. It is only if you are not giving yourself completely to the practice that you will become dissatisfied with it. There is counting the breath, following the breath, shikantaza, mu, the sound of one hand clapping, your original face, or many other koans. The teaching is the same, and each practice reveals one and the same thing. I always like to say, all paths lead to Rome. It's the same thing with practice. For many, many decades, most people worked on mu, the koan mu. That's changed recently, and I think it's a good thing. It doesn't always have to. You don't always have to work on mu. Some people just don't feel a connection to that, which is fine. What is it? Is another koan that feels like more kind of a natural koan. What is it? And I know some people are working on that as well. It's all fine, but I will say that if you do take on a koan, then to commit yourself to that koan and really give it a hard try. Just stick with it year after year if necessary, but to stay with the koan and just stay with it. Now, it's not always the case. Some people do change that practice. But yeah, only after if you've given it a really good go, and then maybe change it if you need to. But I don't know. So for me, there was nothing like mu. As frustrating and as I wanted to pull every single hair out of my head working on mu, that was the one for me. And didn't matter how long it took. It was just. That was the one for me. Counting the breath is the perfect practice at the beginning. Shakyamuni Buddha himself taught this practice. We have example after example of it in the sutras. Starting with a few deep abdominal breaths, your mind's eye settles in your lower belly. Counting on the exhale, just count 1. There is no separation, just doing, just being the breath, being the count. 2, just 2. Count to 10 and naturally start from 1 again. Earnestly count this one breath. Do not let yourself be bothered by thoughts and feelings. If you fall off the count, you pull yourself together and go back to counting your breath. Many thoughts arise in the brain. Just let them be. Many thoughts arise in the brain. Just let them be. The brain is actively going all the time, which is neither good nor bad. Whatever arises, no matter how inviting it appears, neither entertain it nor reject it. This is the key. Be strong on this point. Another way of putting it is avoiding grasping or rejecting or suppressing. Be firm and determined. Be resolved. The host is not the discriminating consciousness. The host is true self. All of heaven and earth, same root. All the myriad things are one body, the true nature. Openly, obediently be pure. Grasp nothing. Hold nothing. Rest nowhere. Let go of everything. You are the embodiment of truth just as you are. Stay in your lower belly. Do this one doing. What is one doing? You can only answer this for yourself by doing it. Simply count this breath. Okay, I think the only other thing I'll mention is briefly just working with pain. The more you place attention on, say, counting of the breath, counting the inhalations and exhalations, the more you do that, the less pain there will be. Pain is something inevitable, not only in life, of course, but in our practice. It's so essential that we don't move during the rounds. I mean, obviously, little micro adjustments are fine if you do notice, like for instance, what I struggle with, my head jutting out. and yeah, go ahead and adjust that. But the limbs, the arms, the legs, no moving. And why is that? Well, we all know why. As Tang and Roshi mentioned, body and mind are not two. They are one. So the more still you can be, the more likely it is that you can get into a deeper state of concentration. And so with the no moving, especially as beginners, it can be difficult. It can be painful. So obviously, I always warn people, if you're feeling a sharp stabbing pain, then you want to change your posture and get into something different where the pain is more manageable. We don't want any damage going on. But the dull, achy pain, yeah, I still get it. The monitors still get it. That really does not become a problem so long as you're just focusing your attention on your practice. And what can be really surprising, I think this was one of the big, I got a deeper leap of faith in this practice, is I was in so much pain sometimes in sesshin, but sometimes the pain would just disappear. So what was that? That's not always the case, but all of a sudden the pain subsided. I was concentrating on mu, putting my whole body into mu, without straining, but just really focusing, concentrating on mu. And the pain wasn't a problem anymore. And at times it even went away. So this is something that each one of us will experience if we stick with it. Managing this pain, it just does not become a problem anymore, especially when the days progress. When the days progress in sesshin, we get less wrapped up in our thoughts, less grasping of any kind of emotional turmoil that's going on, anxiety. We become less wrapped up in that, and it just becomes easier to focus the mind, to focus the body-mind. And the pain just does not become a problem at all anymore. All right, so yeah, no moving and sharp pain, get out of it. But other than that, work with it. All right, so moving on to our main text, which is by the master Ajahn Chah. The title of the book is Everything Arises, Everything Falls Away. Teachings of Impermanence and the End of Suffering. Ajahn Chah was a 20th century master from Thailand. He's a Thai and he kind of really helped revive the Thai forest monastery in Thailand in practice. He is a Theravadan teacher, but as you'll soon see from reading from his book, there's very much a lot of similarity with what we're doing with our practice. So I will try and really pay attention to not use mindfulness words, because what Ajahn Chah talks about often is mindfulness practice, but really it's all going to the same root. So I'll probably just use some words, translate some of his words into the parlance, if you will, of Zen. But first, I always like to read a little bit about the teacher's life. And so I got this actually there is a website dedicated to Ajahn Chah and his teachings. So here we go. Ajahn Chah was born into a typical farming family in a rural village in the province of Ubon Ratchathani, northeastern Thailand. in 1918. He lived the first part of his life as any other youngster in rural Thailand, and following the custom, took ordination as a novice in the local village monastery for 3 years, where he learned to read and write in addition to studying some basic Buddhist teachings. After this, he returned to the lay life to help his parents, but feeling an attraction to the monastic life at the age of 20, he again entered a monastery, this time for higher ordination as a bhikkhu, or Buddhist monk. He spent the first few years of his bhikkhu life studying some basic dharma, discipline, Pali language, and scriptures, but the death of his father awakened him to the transience of life. It caused him to think deeply about life's real purpose, for although he had studied extensively and gained some proficiency in Pali, he seemed no near to a personal understanding of the end of suffering. I almost feel like, what else is there to say? We can read all the books on Zen, study Zen, read the scriptures or the sutras, but it's not gonna. Well, a menu does not satisfy hunger, and obviously the young Ajahn Chah realized this, and there are so many accounts of the masters from Japan and China who had terrible tragedies in their life. Their parents, especially with their parents dying early, and that really kind of turned things for them, and realized that, reading about it, that's not gonna cut it, is it? It's doing the practice. Okay, so feelings of disenchantment set in, and a desire to find the real essence of the Buddhist teaching arose. Finally, in 1946, so he was 28 years old, he abandoned his studies and set off on mendicant pilgrimage. He walked some 400 kilometers to central Thailand, sleeping in forests and gathering alms food in the villages on the way. He took up residence in a monastery where the Vinaya, that's the rules and regulations of monasticism, they were carefully studied there and practiced. Well, while there, he was told about Venerable Ajahn Mun Buridato, a most highly respected meditation master. Keen to meet such an accomplished teacher, Ajahn Chah set off on foot for the northeast in search for him. He began to travel to other monasteries, studying the monastic discipline in detail, and spending a short but enlightening period with Ajahn Mun, the most outstanding Thai forest meditation master of this century. At this time, Ajahn Chah was wrestling with a crucial problem. He had studied the teachings on morality, meditation, and wisdom, which the text presented in minute and refined detail, but he could not see how they could actually be put into practice. Ajahn Mun told him that although the teachings are indeed extensive, at their heart they are very simple. With mindfulness established, if it is seen that everything arises in the heart-mind, right there is the true path of practice. I'll repeat that again. With mindfulness established, if it is seen that everything arises in the heart-mind, right there is the true practice, the true path of practice. Kind of reminds me of what in our workshops, the teachers will often, they may recite the Noble Eightfold Path described by the Buddha. But in Zen, all those 8 paths, we put it all into our Zazen. It doesn't mean that morality doesn't play a place in practice. Of course it does. The precepts do. But really, it's out of our practice. It's out of Zazen that we just become more aligned with the precepts, more aligned with this eightfold path. This succinct and direct teaching was a revelation for Ajahn Chah and transformed his approach to practice. The way was clear. For the next 7 years, so he must be in his early 30s now, for the next 7 years, Ajahn Chah practiced in the style of an ascetic monk in the austere forest tradition, spending his time in forests, caves, and cremation grounds, ideal places for developing meditation practice. He wandered through the countryside in quest of quiet and secluded places for developing meditation. He lived in tiger and cobra-infested jungles, using reflections on death to penetrate the true meaning of life. On one occasion, he practiced in a cremation ground to challenge and eventually overcome his fear of death. Then, as he sat cold and drenched in a rainstorm, he faced the utter desolation and loneliness of a homeless monk. After many years of travel and practice, he was invited to settle in a thick forest grove near the village of his birth. This grove was uninhabited, known as a place of cobras, tigers, and ghosts, thus being, as he said, the perfect location for a forest monk. This does remind me, of course, of Roshi Kapleau. When he was given permission to teach, he was ordained as a priest and moved back in 1966, probably a little earlier, to the United States after training in Japan for 13 years. He did travel around a little bit to find a place where he hoped to start a Zen center. And Rochester was the place for him. He was invited there, and one of the reasons he said later on in life was it was great. It's a great place because it can get so cold. It's good for training, good for practice. All right, I'm just going to finish up. I got a little more information, just the tail end of his life, from the Wikipedia page. Yes, after years of wandering, Ajahn Chah decided to plant roots in an uninhabited grove near his birthplace. In 1954, Wat Nang Pa Pong Monastery was established where Ajahn Chah could teach his simple, practice-based form of meditation. He attracted a wide variety of disciples, which included, in 1966, the first Westerner, Venerable Ajahn Sumedho. I think John Sensei read from Ajahn Sumedho last year or the year before in Sesshin. He did attract a lot of Western practitioners. Probably the most famous one here in this country is Jack Kornfield, and he founded the center in Massachusetts and also out in California. I think it's called Spirit Rock. But this Ajahn Sumedho is actually British, and he's still living and training in England. He's got a forest monastery there. By the early 1980s, Ajahn Chah's health was in decline due to diabetes. He was taken to Bangkok for surgery to relieve paralysis caused by the diabetes, but it was to little effect. Ajahn Chah used his ill health as a teaching point, emphasizing that it was, quote, a living example of the impermanence of all things, and reminded people to endeavor to find a true refuge within themselves. A true refuge within themselves, since he would not be able to teach for very much longer. Shakyamuni Buddha, be a light upon yourself. Ajahn Chah would remain bedridden and ultimately unable to speak for 10 years, until his death on 16 January 1992 at the age of 73. All right, everything arises, everything falls away. I will read one. In this book, there are actually a couple of kind of anecdotal stories about Ajahn Chah. I will read one, just to give the spirit of what he was like. This chapter is called Bringing the Mind Under Our Command. Oh no, excuse me. It's the next one. A lot of defilements. Ajahn Chah at play. Ajahn Chah spoke repeatedly. This is, I believe, one of his disciples telling the story. Ajahn Chah spoke repeatedly of uncertainty, and he also made sure that the life of his monasteries reflected that truth of existence. Disciples learned to live without attachment to routines, expectations, possessions, even to him. In later years, as Ajahn Chah's pace became slower, he would go for alms rounds to the village nearest the monastery. Usually when the line of monks got to the end of the village, when the last donors had offered their rice, a novice or junior monk would relieve him of his bowl, and most of the entourage would walk on ahead, bowing their heads slightly and putting their palms together in a gesture of respect as they went by him. Often he was accompanied by one of the older monks, but occasionally he walked alone. Sometimes as you ducked your head to pass, he would call your name so you would fall and step behind him. One such morning, he began to question me about the abbots I had stayed with in the branch monasteries. When we started talking about Ajahn Sinuan, a senior disciple who was now abbot of his own monastery and who was one of Ajahn Chah's favorite whipping boys. He was also renowned. I don't know if I'll get to this other story, but he was also very strict. He could be very hard on his, especially his senior students. So this disciple said, I said that I had eventually come to feel that Ajahn Sinuan was somewhat lazy and liked to goof off, in spite of his protestations about what an ardent practitioner he was. Right, said Ajahn Chah. Just like me, I've got a lot of defilements. I like to fool around. Although I realized he was putting me on, I was startled to hear such talk and didn't know what to say. Ajahn Chah went on, bending his head towards me, lowering his voice and speaking in mock confidentially. Listen, I'm planning to disrobe, and I want you to help me find a nice woman. Speaking of the faults of others, and here Ajahn Chah is saying, yeah, I've got my own defilements. Now, obviously he's not going to be disrobing, but he is acknowledging his own, like we all do. We are all, I wish I brought this quote from a Japanese master. I don't have it on me right now, but it's, we all have our own defilements. Are they fixed? No, of course not. But what we do through our practice, through Zen practice, we just keep working and refining, purifying this Buddha mind, this bright, luminous mind that we all have, every single one of us. No matter how severe or stuck we feel with some of these defilements, whether they may be greed, anger, delusion, the three big ones, we all have them. Every single one of us. And Ajahn Chah himself is acknowledging, I've got my own defilements. All right, chapter 11. Bringing the mind under our command. And this is Ajahn Chah speaking. Whatever states of mind, happy or unhappy, occur, never mind. We should constantly be reminding ourselves, this is uncertain. This is something people don't consider very much, that, quote, this is uncertain. Just this is a vital factor that will bring about wisdom. In order to cease our coming and going and find rest, we only need to say, this is uncertain. Sometimes we may be distraught over something to the point that tears are flowing. That is something not certain. When moods of desire or aversion come to us, we should just remind ourselves of this one thing. Another way of putting it is, it will pass. Whether standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, whatever appears is uncertain. Can't you do this? Keep it up no matter what happens. Give it a try. All right, so obviously for us as Zen practitioners, we're not going to be saying this is uncertain. It is, because it is. Everything is uncertain. But instead of saying this is uncertain, counting the breath. Just the counting. The way I practice, he goes on, the way I practice meditation is not very complicated. Just this. This is what it all comes down to. It's uncertain. Everything meets at this point. You don't need to keep track of all the various instances of mental experience. When you sit in meditation, there may be various conditions of mind appearing. Seeing and knowing all manner of things experience different states. Don't keep track of them and don't get wrapped up in them. You only need to remind yourself that they're uncertain. That's enough. That's simple and it's easy to do. Then you can stop. Insight will come, but then don't make too much out of that or get attached to it. Those are the tricky ones. Or they can be the tricky ones. If we get some kind of, say, personal insight about our past or our habit patterns, we can kind of cling to that and hold on to it. Especially, or if it's, say, some experience we've had where we get into a samadhi for a period of time, and then eventually, of course, like all things, since everything is uncertain, it will pass, and then we'll just get caught up in our own thoughts and wanting to get back to that and holding on to that and trying to recreate that. And none of that will help. It's just simply returning. This understanding of things is always timely and relevant. At all times, it is impermanence that rules. This is something you should meditate on. The true and correct words of the sages will not lack mention of impermanence. If there is no mention of impermanence, it is not the speech of the wise. It is not the speech of the enlightened ones. It's called speech that does not accept the truth of existence. As I see it, once we have correct insight, the mind comes under our command. So he's talking about awakening here. He uses the word knowledge, which is an odd translation. But as I see it, once we have correct insight, the mind comes under our command. I think command can be a little deceiving. Our mind comes under a command. They're just thoughts. They're just thoughts. But what do? We grasp at our thoughts. We cling to our thoughts. We try to avoid our thoughts. We try to stop our thoughts. But they're just thoughts. It's like I said, they're not good, they're not bad. All thoughts are created equal. So our mind comes more under our command because we don't care about our thoughts. We don't analyze our thoughts. We just get back to the practice over and over and over again. It really is. It's like working a muscle. It really is. Or Roshi used to use the analogy of weightlifting, in terms of our practice maturing and progressing. It's kind of, we reach a different plateau. You end up putting on 10 more pounds the next week. I'm not crazy about that analogy actually, but that's the principle is there. Things can just change really on a deeper level, and it's not an all or nothing thing with our thoughts. We just slowly but surely disentangle more and more from our thoughts, and then that plateau, that change, that drop is like, oh, they're just thoughts. Like I don't need to focus on them. Just get back to counting the breath, or just get back to mu. But then we just get stuck in our thoughts again, over and over again. And then if it's not our thoughts, we get frustrated because we're so stuck in our thoughts, and like the wheels start turning, and why am I not progressing? What is wrong with me? And again and again, those are just thoughts. And then as a result of our wheels spinning more and more, we just get frustrated. And that's when the emotions or the feelings can start kicking in, and then we're really off and running, where all we really need to do is just return to the practice over and over again. And we say this over and over again. You probably tired of hearing, but it's the truth. Just drop the clinging. Just return. And it gets easier. It really does. As I see it, once we have correct insight, the mind comes under our command. What is this command about? The command is anicca, knowing that everything is impermanent. Anicca is the Pali word for impermanence. Everything stops here when we see clearly, and it becomes the cause for us letting go. Then we let things be according to their true nature, according to their nature. All right, our time is up, and we'll now recite the 4 vows.